business, batch leads is the answer. Why? Because direct to seller marketing is the key. It's finding motivated sellers. And with batch leads, you can skip trace, you can list stack, you can market via SMS or direct mail. It is truly the answer to scaling your business. Check it out and sign up today.
Hey guys, what is up? It's your man Lenny. Thanks for stopping in for another episode of Wholesaling with Lenny. Guys, I actually got a special guest here tonight. Okay, Miss Casey Belew. Guys, I want to introduce Miss Casey Belew here because Miss Casey Belew is a heavy advocate in marijuana. Okay, in the state of Missouri, she's known all throughout the country. Okay, she's also the owner of Green Goddess Getaways, right, guys, which is a new era in short-term rentals. Okay, we're gonna go into that today as well. Casey, thanks for coming to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
No doubt, no doubt. So, for the last few years, the biggest thing, the biggest boom, okay, the biggest boom in real estate has been short-term rentals, right?
Yes.
Especially during COVID, right before COVID, Airbnb, exploded onto the scene, and then other avenues, as well as glamping and, all these other short-term rental ideas popped up, but you never really hear about cannabis-friendly short-term rentals, right? So like I said before, you are a big cannabis advocate, right?
Yes.
You are, head of your own division of Normal, which is, cannabis advocates, owner of Belew dispensary, you speaker, stages across the state, stages across the Midwest. What started your journey on, medical marijuana? Let's start there first before we get into, the short-term rentals.
Sure. Great place to start. I really started as an advocate before I was a business owner in the cannabis industry. It was really, to me, more about getting that awareness out. Changing the stigma is a big key phrase, it seemed like. But it really just started with the desire to have it normalized, if nothing else. I really got into my first cannabis business when we applied for a dispensary in the state of Missouri, and kind of expanded from there. In all transparency, we were denied the dispensary license, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise, as I always say, because we were able to kind of reposition ourselves and figure out what else we wanted to do. And that's when I started doing cooking with cannabis classes. We started doing medical cards, just really branching out and seeing that it wasn't just dispensary cultivation,
Exactly.
testing. There's so much more, and there are so many niche markets in the industry that are just untapped completely, in my personal opinion. And I think that that's what really drew our interest to the cannabis short-term rentals, because being someone who travels constantly doing work with cannabis and meeting new patients and doing these traveling 420 classes, you really learn, like, there are not a lot of cannabis friendly places to stay whenever
Right.
you're out and about, and even as a medical patient, and that's understandable if a place is not equipped to deal with the smoke or whatever it is. And that's one thing we had to really focus on in our rental was ventilation and air purification and things like that. So it was just a market that we kind of saw as untapped, and it felt like an easy step from one to the next, already having been involved in all the licensing and I guess I would just say how strict all the guidelines surrounding cannabis in every aspect are. So being kind of familiar with that made it a really exciting adventure for us to get into.
Most definitely, most definitely. So yeah, for you guys who don't know, the Green Goddess Getaways first location is actually in Miami, Oklahoma, and we are scheduled to open soon, guys. You guys can book. The link is scrolling at the bottom of your screen. Within doing, all the recent work that you do with Belew, and you teach thousands of people how to make cannabis fun, right? How to make
Yeah.
cannabis fun, exciting. You know what I mean? People, actually, funny story. We just had a roll. We was last, was it last? No, actually, New Year's Eve. We had a roll. We was at a friend's house. They invited us out to the cabin. It was an Airbnb, and we had a roll, and the roll put me on my ass, okay? And then Carrie was telling me that the person who actually gave them the role, you actually taught that person how to make the butter.
Oh, that is so cool.
It was
Yes.
it was
Yes.
wild, right? It was wild.
Yes.
It was wild. Yeah, yeah, it was pretty cool. And then Carrie was like, "Wait, she's like, I know her." And then Carrie was like, "Yeah." Well, Casey taught her how to make, how to make the butter. So, it was pretty awesome. So, when early on, right, early on, because your name, um, since you started the dispensary, started your work with cannabis, your name has been synonymous with good bud. Okay, good bud.
Yeah.
Now people are kind of wondering when they go to the dispensary, like, is how far? Excuse me, when they go to, the rental, how far is the dispensaries away from, the rental, or, do you guys have some kind of delivery system set up to where your customers can order, have the bud dropped off, something like Kush Fly, or, something like that?
Well, that's actually something that we're currently working on. We work with, we have some friends who own a couple of dispensaries out in Miami. I would say the closest dispensary is like a half mile away. It's very
Right.
close by. It's really close to casinos. That's another big draw for us. It's not just the dispensaries, it is the casino crowd that wants to be 420 friendly. We've got a hot tub set up. So very comfy, casual, but still really nice and spa like. That was kind of the vibe we were going for. Luxury meets comfort and cannabis. As far as delivery goes, we have a few friends who own some spaces out there that we'd like to set up a delivery with, and not necessarily just for our location, but to do other patients as well. That's kind of a market that hasn't been established out there as far as delivery goes. That's not dispensary specific,
Right.
so if a patient wants to look at variety, maybe we can create some kind of online menu of what's available. And we've got some people really eager to work with us on that front. So that's some stuff in action there. But for right now, some of my favorite dispensaries are about 3 miles away. So about a 6 to 8 minute drive, depending on how you drive, I suppose I could say.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
because I know they do got the flying pig out there,
yes. Yep.
right?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I've seen the flying pig out there. I know they got some nice things going on with the flying pig.
Yeah,
But this is gonna be
absolutely.
this is gonna be awesome. I know everyone's excited. Um, to the fact where I've never been to, short term rental where, I can just kind of go in and smoke some weed. I mean, because there's so much like with there's so much restrictions that Airbnb itself
Yes.
puts on the rentals versus someone going out, starting their own market, starting their own niche,
Exactly.
and starting to niche in their own
Exactly.
market to where, the regulation comes from you.
Exactly. And I actually, so starting off, we have not gone through Airbnb or Verbo. We haven't had to yet. I created a booking website. So I kind of built the website myself, and was able, I worked with um, a woman who writes contracts for a living essentially, and she reads them, so to make sure that we kind of locked down the legality side of it and kept ourselves and our patients safe, we have terms and conditions that kind of follow suit that just go through booking, and that kind of eliminated some fees for us, to be honest, which was really nice. A lot of times whenever you're booking through Airbnb or these booking sites, they're wanting like around 30% of your sales, which can accumulate really quickly when you're a small business doing it, doing the thing for the first time. So we thought that if we could go off of this website and be independent for these first few months while we're really launching out, and we've already gotten 3 bookings in our first 3 weeks, which is really exciting. And so to see that kind of play out on an independent platform first, I think is where we're going to be most successful, because like you said, Airbnb does have a lot of restrictions and
Definitely.
things that whether you're a host or staying there, you need to abide by. And that's, that is for the protection of both the host and the guest. But we kind of saw it as an opportunity to build something ourselves. Like, you see at the bottom of the screen, Green Goddess Getaway. And we're working on getting some of our professional photos uploaded onto the website of the space since we are fully furnished now. And just making sure that the website is clean and simple. I know that sometimes people really go overboard on the website, and that's not
Right.
really necessarily what we're looking for, especially for this space. We want it to have, a gallery of photos and an easy booking access. And so that people can see availability. And then we do have like friends and family discounts that can be applied through our website that you wouldn't be able to do necessarily on Airbnb. So we've got like 25% off for friends and family, 10% off for patients that are out of state. So yeah, just trying to hit a few different pegs there on the website.
Awesome. Most definitely. Most definitely. Now, I have a question really quick, really fast. If, say, someone wanted to say, hey, KC, I love for Green Goddess to represent my brand in your, in your rentals. Um, like, is that something that you're thinking about, or how would someone,
Yeah.
be able to get in contact with you, by doing that?
Yes, we've already had one group from Oklahoma, one of the dispensaries, reach out about sponsorships and kind of what they can do, products they could maybe offer, especially if you have the medical card for Oklahoma and can verify that, maybe like little samples and teasers and things like that we could do for patients and like a welcome basket when they get there. And then it's kind of mutually beneficial for both of us because they get their products out there. And then we have some freebies and some incentives that we can offer to our guests too. So we do have one company that's already offered sponsorships. And we're talking numbers with them right now, what that really looks like, because I think we could have it be where it's kind of merchandise based or where they even go in on future homes with us. Because right now we do just have the one house. We wanted to kind of dip our toes in since we are still learning a lot on this platform, especially. And just making sure that we're getting all the licensing in order, especially since we're doing independent. Because one thing that is nice about Airbnbs for the state of Oklahoma, they'll take out the hotel tax. That's the extra tax required whenever you're doing something like a rental, short-term or long-term.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's nice that they go ahead, they take those taxes out for you. It's one thing that if you're not as organized or if you're not set up as a business, if you're just have an extra house that you want to rent out, doing something like an Airbnb would make a lot of sense. It saves you. We spent probably $500 building the website, but again, it's something that works for us. And so
Definitely.
it's a good avenue for sure, but we just wanted to kind of establish things on our own being cannabis friendly. And I've seen a couple of, 420 friendly stays on Airbnb. So it's not like completely unheard of. And there are booking sites that are specific to cannabis friendliness. But yeah, while we're just doing a few rentals right now, I was like, let's do this independently and save on some fees.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, because number one expense on business is overhead. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if we can cut the overhead and just a little bit, especially when it comes to marketing, which is like the biggest driver of our revenue, right?
Absolutely.
If we can cut our expenses on that, is awesome. And I want to go back real quick because there's probably some people who watching this who's in short-term rentals or who want to be short-term rentals, or they may be listening to the
Mhm.
podcast as well. Entering into the space, right? Me myself, I've never been to one. This is my first time hearing one, so I think it's like pretty cool if I walked into the room and there's like a little welcome basket, a few pre-rolls, might be a little gummy or something in the back. I think I lose my
Yeah,
fucking shit. I probably lose, like, no, seriously, like I probably lose my shit and be like, whoa, how long can we book this place? Yeah, you know what I mean?
sure.
So
Exactly.
yeah, and and Miami is a nice little town. It's a nice little town, and like you said, the closest dispensary is half a mile away. I mean, that's walking distance, right? And
Exactly.
then
Yeah,
you got the casino. You can go win more money and buy more weed. So so,
exactly. Stay
so then
even
you can
longer.
most definitely. So then you can definitely stay much longer. So guys, y'all gonna have to excuse me on this because I do have a joint here, and since we're talking about cannabis and short-term rentals, I am about to light this up. Okay, this doobie that I got, and we're gonna talk about cannabis and short-term rentals, right? But so what made you choose Miami, right? So because you got Tulsa, we got Broken Arrow, we got Oklahoma City. What made you choose Miami specifically?
So I've been going out to Miami for almost 2 years as a 30-day short-term patient. Since I have my Missouri medical card, you can get your temporary license out there. And so honestly, we just formed a lot of friendships and relationships out there that became symbiotic, and I realized, one, the cost of living is pretty low out there. So it was going to be a feasible market for us to buy into. That was my biggest thing. I've been scouring the market for the right place and space to do something like this in for probably a year and a half, 2 years. And nothing ever seemed quite right for our budget, for what we needed. Not having a lot of contracting experience or knowledge myself, I knew that if we bought something like a fixer upper, we would be spending, 50 grand fixing up, so it had to be something that made sense for our budget, something that was turnkey ready. And so Miami fit that budget. And with it being something that has draws like casinos, we have like, I want to say 5 casinos within a 10-mile radius of the B&B. So if you want to go out, play your slots, I'm a blackjack girl myself. We get to go and do that and have fun, especially as a couple, or if we want to take friends out there. And we have a whole house. So it's not like, we only do $150 a night for the B&B. So if you split that between a few people and you go and do like a couples retreat, it's really pretty inexpensive. So we wanted to do something in a place that, we didn't want it middle of nowhere, that it wouldn't make sense to have something like this. But with it having the draw of the dispensaries, especially, it just felt like kind of a perfect location for us. And then we discovered that, especially like the sponsorships and the friendships that we've formed out there, we've been really blessed and lucky to make the connections that we have. So it felt right, and when we found this house, it was actually an inheritance. We've become kind of close with the seller. She's a really wonderful lady who actually asked. It was funny because I talk about cannabis everywhere I go. It gets formed into my conversation. And I was kind of telling her what I do with cooking and the patients I've worked with, because she lost her dad to Parkinson's dementia about 4 years ago and her mom to cancer this last year. And we kind of just spoke on her experiences with that and with the doctors and with her parents kind of trying THC towards the end, and just formed a friendship in that way. And so it's kind of cool to see that this space, where it came from and where it can really go. She's excited for us. But we bought it as, the point of that is we bought it as an inheritance. Her mom owned this property and several others. And so we got a great deal on it, which is a blessing. That's all I can say. It's the God and universe, got together.
It was definitely waiting.
Yes, definitely exactly. Waiting, but it was probably on the market for like an hour before I was like making phone calls, and I was pretty insistent on it because it was turnkey ready. It needs the things we're doing to it are mostly cosmetic, things that just haven't been. It's more like a taste for us. Things that we want to do and get it really sharp and clean for renters. But yeah, we're under budget, which doesn't really happen if you know me well. Right. So that's a great place to be.
Yeah, it is. I was just having a conversation with one of my friends earlier, and we was talking about the budget. I was watching something last night, and I was like, "Yeah, dude, they went over budget." Woo. He was like, "What you learned from that?" I was like, "Don't go over budget."
Woo. It's hard not to though right now, because it seems like all of your projections are going to be running under what the actual value is going to be. So we're lucky that our contractor is kind of motivated, we'll say. But whenever you're getting into things like plumbing and HVAC and all these other issues, it really starts to add up. We had when we bought the place and we got the inspection, we bought it as is, but when we got the inspection done, it was in depth, but they couldn't really tell us what was wrong with the HVAC. They didn't specialize in that. So we budgeted, $2,000 out to fix that. it ended up being like a switch that wasn't flipping. It cost us $130, you know? So
Right.
those are good places to be in. So,
Yeah, definitely. Now you was just talking about the HVAC and HVAC, right? Now
yes.
earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned something about the ventilation
Yes.
in the house, right? So in the short term rental for cannabis, is there like what is the ventilation system like, right? Is it
Hmm.
like a big is it like a big grow tent? Or you know what I mean? Like the fan
I
that's
wish
in
that'd
it
be
or
so cool. No, we got individual air purifying units for each room. So essentially that kind of cleanses and clears the air of the smoke. And then we have new windows. So between guests we can go out, and if it's a particularly smoky occasion, and we are gonna, we have posted, and it's in our terms and conditions, we say green smoke inside, gray smoke outside. So if you smoke cigarettes, there are areas on like the porches to smoke. Now, we can't necessarily say one way or another. Like we legally can't say, hey, you can't smoke cigarettes here, but you can smoke cannabis, So it has to be smoking friendly is what it's technically under legally, under our terms. But we do prefer the cigarette smoke outside because that smell sticks to walls and to furniture a lot more easily. But as far as ventilation, we just have fans and purifiers for the air.
That is awesome. Now, when you were saying going into more partnerships, we're talking about going into more
Mhm.
partnerships, kind of expanding, the Green Goddess portfolio out a little bit. Um, if someone's looking right now and it was like, hey, you know what? I don't know nothing about Oklahoma. I know a lot about weed. She knows what she's talking about. I've seen her name. I got some money to, invest, up under the brand. Say someone wanted to be under your brand and expand, right? 'Cause like I said, the markets for rentals, short-term rentals are hot, right?
Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
a lot of people say they may die down soon, right? But
Sure.
um, in the niche markets, right? And whenever most things crash, whatever niche market is in that market generally survives, right?
Yes,
Because it provides something totally different.
absolutely.
Than,
Yeah, they say niche is rich. Yeah.
right, exactly. Everything's around it. So being in this space gives you an opportunity, right? And I wanted to go and I want to touch on um, November 8th, right? I want to touch on November 8th, and I want to touch on issue 3.
Hmm.
Here in Missouri, we're trying to make marijuana recreational legal for recreational use. There are a lot. I saw a guy the other day. My brother sent me a video as he was going into the dispensary. There's a guy out there had a sign. He's like, no, 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 no. And I asked my brother, like, does he work? Asked him, does he work for the local dealer or the pharmaceutical company? Right?
Exactly right.
Because
Exactly.
yeah, I mean you working for the local dealer or the pharmaceutical company. I mean, why is you out there trying to ban weed, buddy? Like makes no sense, right? And
Absolutely right.
with all the deaths, with all the overdoses in America, last year and the year before, 76% of those deaths for people ages 18 to 24 has been opioids, right? And this is a big problem, in the state of Missouri as well. Moving forward, right? Moving forward to kind of push, issue 3 all the way through the door. What impact that you feel that will have on the local cannabis community, as well as those who can find this on the street faster than they can find that?
Exactly right.
You know what I mean?
Yep. I think it's obviously vital that it goes recreational. I think we're all kind of holding out for federal legalization whenever they want to finally get their ducks in a row. And I was joking the other day, I was like, it'll go federal, but it'll be after everyone has their stocks invested and they have their money placed in cannabis. You know what I mean? They'll definitely always be the
Exactly.
primary breadwinners in the cannabis industry. I think to think anything less is
Shout
almost
out to
naive
Paul
at this
Ryan, huh?
point. I mean, and it's, looking back, it's like we were very naive going into our dispensary application. I think that we had a strong application. We had a great team. We had financing to back us, but it's a player's game. If you didn't have, certain people on your team, or you didn't have certain experience, or you hadn't worked with other teams from other states, then that's just the way it was. And I know a lot of people are frustrated with Amendment 3 because they're saying, okay, well, it does kind of suck. The only people allowed to get licensing for the first 2 years out into recreational will be people who already have licensing. It does kind of, it monopolizes the market, but again, you just have to be realistic and know that it's the industry. That's how it is. And one thing I was frustrated most with Amendment 3 is they were really pushing the well, this is expungement, it's automatic expungement for anybody under this weight. But what people really don't understand is that is primarily for the wealthy. You know what I mean? You have to have a lawyer to get expunged. It's not something that there's a database for nonviolent cannabis offenders where it's
Right.
like, oh, we're going to press a button and we're going to let all these people out and it's going to be a kumbaya day. It's something that has to go in front of a judge. It has to go through the same process of litigation. And chances are, if somebody is in prison for a nonviolent marijuana offense, there's a good chance they didn't have representation in the first place. There's a big gap there in communication and understanding, I think, because I've seen several people who are like, well, it's going to be automatic expungement, and my brother and my cousin and all these people are going to be under this umbrella now. And it's like, well, that's awesome, but you have to understand it's not on November 9th. If it passes, then everyone is get out of jail free card. There's still a process, but it's a great start. There's not going to be any perfect petition. There's not going to be one thing that we're all so happy with and it fits the bill. I think this is good language, honestly. Comparatively, I think it's kind of written by the same people who did medical. And so it does protect the patient rights as medical. If you look at other states that went from medical to recreational, one thing you really have to look at is, okay, did the recreational ruin the medical program? Sometimes they'll come in, quality goes down, prices go up, you have less availability to the products and things that you really need. It took forever for Missouri to get RSO on the market, which is something that a lot of my patients really benefit from, whether they have cancer, neuropathy, chronic pain, nausea. It can really help so many people. And there was a huge frustration that they weren't getting this product on the market because they're just, they only had to do as much as they wanted to do. And so now I think that this can drive competition a little more. I think it'll bring prices down a little bit in Missouri. That's usually what you see when a recreational petition passes. But for someone in my position who's doing things like 420 friendly rentals, and even if we go into doing long-term rentals after the short terms, if short-term viability doesn't stay high like it has been, we're still sitting on properties that we can do long-term rentals for, and it's already kind of set up and ready to go, which is cool. So either way, whether it passes or not, I think it's going in the right direction because it shows there's a lot of support for cannabis in Missouri, a lot more than I think a lot of people realize with it being such a red state. But we had like a landslide. I mean, whenever it was for medical, they said, what is it, a super swing or something like that, to where it's, that can't be right. But it's over 60%. I think we were at 63% in favor of medical whenever it passed. So that's huge. I don't think a lot of people really expected that. So there's a really good chance that it'll pass in the fall. It's really, gosh, only a few days away now. It's crazy.
That most definitely. I had to go to that property I just closed on and put more vote yes signs all around it.
Yes, absolutely.
Just to kind of get more traffic. Get more traffic, get more people
Yep.
get more people aware, So, and you had just brought up the Rick Simpson's oil. My one of my friends, his dad, has stage 4 cancer now, and
Hmm.
he had just went and actually got some more Rick Simpson oil, or whatever, and so yeah, definitely, and he had to get it. Well, he had got it from California or whatever, but
Sure.
directly from one of his friends, whatever. But it's a need for it because everybody don't have the card, right? And
Right.
then
Exactly.
how it's made now, kind of like if you wanted to get some CBD from the CBD store, the prices hasn't changed. But if you had that medical card, you can go in the store and get that same amount for like $10,
Right. Yes.
right? Like it's
Right.
50 over here, but it's 10 in here because you got the card.
Yes.
Right? So that's no fair, right? So hopefully, like you said, it'll bring more competition because I forgot where it was. Me and my buddy, called me. He's like, man, I just left Oklahoma. I'm on my way. Then he come and he was like, man, I just got this ounce for $25, and I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? He's like, yeah, I just got this ounce for $25. And I was like, oh, shit. He's like, dude, it's everywhere over there. He's like, there's so many dispensaries. And I was like, yeah, definitely the price is going to, go down. Missouri price is softening, a lot with, I guess some of these big brands is trying to come in. Prices are softening. But I figure once it fully goes recreational, we can get this thing recreational, it'll be a lot of happy people. A lot of happy
Right.
people
Yeah.
around here. A lot of happy school programs. You know what I mean? Getting some
Yeah.
funding. Wherever they decide to take. The funds.
Well,
Whether
and
to
I've
put
said,
it.
I think that the closest to an actual open market is Oklahoma. I mean, it takes, $2,500 to get your licensing out there, and all you do is essentially fill out the application. And that's why there are so many growers and dispensaries and manufacturers and all this out there, because the availability for licensing was so much more accessible. And
It was
I think
Yosemite Sam over there.
absolutely. And Oklahoma made a lot of money. Oklahoma made some good money over these last few years off of the medical program, the way it should have been. Because I am a firm believer that the strong will survive and the weak will fail. That is just how we are set up as humans, as business owners. It's hard to escape, quite frankly, especially in something like a COVID market. It's changed
Right.
everything about spending. But that's how it should be. And so in Oklahoma there's that availability for more competition and lower prices, because you could get your save up or get your taxes and get your cultivation license and then start selling to dispensaries. So home growers can have their stuff tested and sold to dispensaries. So I think it really helped a lot of people, and patients in a lot of ways. So I think that's another reason that we kind of fell in love with the Oklahoma market, after being in the Missouri market for a few years. It's very cutthroat here compared to there. And I'm not saying there's not, obviously there's bad mouthing and there's nonsense between dispensaries and dispensary owners out there, like there will be. But for the most part, we just had a much better experience um, with the entire industry. And that's kind of why we decided to start in Miami instead of, buying a house in Springfield or somewhere nearby here, to do it in Missouri. With the casinos and with the market out there, I was like, well, this seems like a pretty perfect fit for us.
Exactly. So now let's fast forward. Let's fast forward until
Mhm.
the 8th, right? Boom. Missouri, starting January 1st, will be fully recreational, right? Are you thinking short term rental St. Louis by the casino? Kansas City?
Yes. I would say
Springfield?
Lake of the Ozarks would probably be our next move. love the lake, and it's really not far from us up here in Buffalo. It's probably about 45 minutes. So I'd say Lake of the Ozarks, and then Kansas City would be our first expansions here in Missouri. Branson to, hit all the little lakes that people like to travel to, because you have to think, we wouldn't do condos or anything like that, because condos have so many rules about smoking within them, because that smoke can go into other units. So we'd probably do what we did now. We even talked about eventually doing like 420 hotel space in Branson, right on the strip. Now that's probably 5-year plan for us, but just expanding into places that make sense for us. We don't want to go to a place where we are not going to be welcome, and where we're going to have to deal with not just the legal side of it, but also the community really rejecting us, because that's something that you have to deal with no matter the sanction of cannabis industry that you're in. There are always going to be people who are against it, unfortunately. And until they have that personal experience where maybe a parent or a sibling of theirs has their life saved with cannabis, and there's really not a lot that you can do. I've had conversations with some people where it's just like the ignorance is so strong, it's almost like they think you're trying to overtake the land with cannabis. And something that I've tried to really reiterate to everyone is it's not for everyone. I still have close friends of mine who get like crippling anxiety whenever they use cannabis, no matter the strain, or people with low blood pressure who it makes their blood pressure drop out. There are things where maybe it's not a one size fits all, but there are so many patients with so many different disabilities and diagnoses that cannabis has helped that you would never expect. I've got patients who, and it's one thing, you can't just look at someone and see whether or not they use cannabis as medicine. It's much more discreet than a lot of people think. But it's been so eye-opening, to see everyone from, I've had patients, friends of mine who are parents of children with special needs. So they either have, epilepsy and seizures, or any illness that you're seeing your child go through, is not something that you want to treat with pharmaceuticals. So we made sublinguals and things like that. So everything really from birth to age 88, and can be helped with it in a lot of different ways. We've tried pain salves and topicals and sublinguals. And that's where we really got into some fun stuff with the edibles when we started really getting into it, because it didn't just become like brownies and cookies and sweet stuff. It was really more making full meals for people and meal prepping, and then teaching people who have different issues how they can use things topically. So maybe if they had lung issues, they didn't have to suffer through that. So it's been a really cool experience in that sector.
Exactly. So I got scrolling at the bottom of the screen, cooking with Cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want to talk about the classes. For anybody who don't know, you guys can go head over to the Facebook group right now. Join the group, guys. Listen, there's a live class going on every week. You got to be a part of it. Going back to what she just said, it's not just about cookies and cakes and brownies and Rice Krispie treats, okay? Listen, whole meals, guys. You guys can literally enjoy whole meals with cannabis, learn how to do it, get your cannabinoids all feeling all great. You know what I'm saying? Your CB receptors going. Guys, listen, head on over, join the group if you're watching this right now. Cooking with Cannabis, and sign up for the class that goes on every week. Bringing the short-term rental market right now at this season, right? This fall season, this winter season that we're about to enter, I believe is a great time going into next year, right?
Yes.
Going forward into next year. And you had just mentioned maybe in hotel, later on, friendly room. Is there many friendly short-term rentals where you are right now?
No, not at all. So far with our research, we're the only one in the area. I'd say closest would probably be Tulsa, which is about an hour and a half out. We are like almost exactly halfway between Springfield and Tulsa. If that kind of gives you a little bit of space. Tulsa's about 3 hours from Springfield, and Miami is about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But there are none. Whenever I was going and passing out my flyers to the different dispensaries there in town, because marketing really is everything, especially for something like this. But so I just made some flyers and business cards, and that's kind of how we've gotten our first bookings, which is cool. But we have people who work at those dispensaries who, like one girl, her mom is the GM at a casino, so they were able to get some of our flyers in the casinos too. And so just really kind of promoting ourselves, quite frankly, from the ground up. So I got the baby. Why are you mad, baby? Sorry. Okay.
So yeah, that is awesome, man. That is awesome. Yeah, so like being like that's like pretty much that's the market. You got the market right now. And like
Yeah.
I said, it's a short ride. It's between Springfield and Tulsa. So anybody who's watching this podcast and you going out just going out to casino down in Miami is downstream, correct?
Yes, there's downstream, there's Buffalo Run, we've got Stables, High Winds. I think those are the closest four.
Nice.
And then there's like Prairie Moon. What else is out there? I'm a casino girl myself, so I'm trying to think of all that's out there.
So you guys got
but those are all within a few miles.
So we got the weed. We got the weed within half a mile. We got the dispensaries. We got the dispensaries in half a mile, and we got the hotel. So anybody from Springfield heading on down, you guys know you got to book it because you don't want to be standing outside the back of a hotel smoking no weed, and the police roll up on your ass. So go ahead and book a room before you get down that way. And don't be calling Lenny, talking about Lenny, man, I should have booked the room. Like you said, so book the damn room. So
Yeah.
you won't be calling me talking about you shouldn't have booked the room. It's at the bottom of the screen. Moving forward, we just want to talk. We like to talk. We like to ask about what you read and what you're listening to, right? So give my audience 3 books that you may have read, right, and why you think that it may be essential reading for someone who's just living life, right? It ain't even got to be about business. Is just living life, making our way downtown as the
Sure.
song, right?
Brilliant. Well, I would say my most read books are obviously about cannabis. I know that's probably goes to say, but I've read a lot of grow books, but trying to think. And honestly, what I've been reading most is about kind of mental wellness and what that looks like for me. I think that one big part of being successful, no matter what your finances look like, is really making sure you're mentally well so that you can handle those finances appropriately whenever you do come into some money. And so I've read, in this last year, like The Body Keeps Score, and that really talks about how all these things that we're doing are impactful to ourselves long term. It's not just about what we're doing today or tomorrow. It's not just about me locking my finances in place and figuring out how to invest them. It's like I could have all the money in the world and still never feel fulfilled. So really trying to get into more books about like myself, my healing. So yeah, Body Keeps Score was a big one for me. I've read a few finance books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a classic, of course. I've seen a couple of the ones that he's written. Gosh, that's hard to say though. I do love a good audiobook. I'm listened to Warren Buffett's investing audiobook. That was another good one. I've recently invested in some of the Occidental Petroleum that he is currently throwing a bunch of money into. Yeah. I joked the other day, I was like, if it's good enough for Warren Buffett, it's good enough for me, But trying to just really position those assets to make sense. I'd been saving this money for a long time, and this was the first house I'd placed a cash offer on, so that was exciting for us. But it didn't happen overnight. I wasn't one of the lucky people who came up off Bitcoin or anything. That was truly money that we'd worked and saved for, but just knowing that that money's not going to be beneficial to us just sitting in an account, not going anywhere. And this was something that we'd been wanting to do for a long time. So we kind of bit the bullet. We made the jump. And so far it's been really beneficial to us. And the way that we really reasoned it out at the end of the day was, one, it was an incredible deal on this property. And if nothing else, we could long-term rental it. We could always sell it. It's not something that's going to lose us money. So that's a good place to be as an investor, no matter what you're putting money into. And our initial goal was to stay under $50,000 for everything. And we're currently about $7,000 under budget. So we love that. We love that.
Perfect. Most definitely. Most definitely. So man, listen, right now, for someone who's watching, someone who's listening, right, they may think about getting into short-term rentals, right? They may wonder, do you need an LLC, right? They may wonder, you know, do you need a bank account? How long does it take, you know, right? So if you can break down, if you can give our audience a short breakdown from entry to setup, right? Everybody's launch is different, obviously, right? So if you can take us through the entry, you know, to the setup. Someone may not know, they may not know what forms to use, et cetera, et cetera. I was thinking about keeping the property that I had under contract a few months ago, and I had reached out, you know, to a friend who has the Airbnb cabins, right? And she gave me all the information. She gave me all the forms I had to fill out, whatever, this, that. And a lot of people don't have that, right? So, you know, for those who are watching or listening right now, if you had to, like, what are the steps that someone needs to actually set up, you know, a cannabis-friendly Airbnb?
The first thing I would suggest doing before you even purchase a property, look at the laws within your state. Because I know, like, Georgia recently passed some pretty strict rules about B&B, and it is to try to keep the money within the state and kind of with the local people, so you're not having people that come in and purchase up everything that would be worth buying for someone like me who's trying to come in and hit the ground running. They want you to have your primary residence be one of your rentals. And so they really check with your state on the legality of doing short-term rentals. That would be my first suggestion. And then I did do an LLC just to protect ourselves, especially doing something like rentals, so that if anything were to go wrong, you have to plan for contingencies. It's not something anyone likes to talk about, but you have to plan for those things. So making sure that your insurance is in place. Little things like that. I paid for my insurance for the year out to save a little bit of money. But making sure that your state is going to allow the short-term rental is the biggest thing. Because you could buy an entire property and then be shut down from the state side of it. Now, like I was talking about a little earlier, Oklahoma has what's called like a hotel tax, to where if you're doing something like a short-term rental, if someone stays, I think it's more than 2 consecutive days in your home and you're charging them for it, you have to take this extra tax into consideration. So really look into, I guess, the legal side of it. If nothing else, I always suggest just going with a lawyer, because while it might have some upfront cost, it's going to save you a lot in the long term.
Exactly.
And then, like I said, I'm working with a contract writer specifically to write out my terms and conditions, so that if it was me, it'd be like, hey, this is super casual, but she was able to break it down to where it's legal language.
Don't be burning shit.
Right. Don't burn my shit up. Absolutely. Ashtrays, man. But you know, I laughed because she helped us do some whenever we were doing cooking classes at Belew. So she had put in the contract, you know, not responsible for death. And I was like, death, girl, we don't have to say that up in here. You calm that down. But she was right, you know. Yeah. Anything from point A to point Z you want covered, you know, for your own safety. So I did LLC for that reason with both of my businesses, to just kind of mitigate some of the liability if something went wrong. So I have filed LLCs differently with all 3 of my LLCs. With the first, we did a lawyer. The second, I did LegalZoom. The third, I filed by myself. It just saved a little bit of money off the top. But then, yeah, if you're going to go through Airbnb, there are forms that they'll send you specifically to fill out as a host. We've looked into it a little bit, but yeah, I would say just filing with the state and with the city, making sure that you are making that. We're out of city limits, so we just kind of have to deal with county where we're at. That's why we purchased where we did too. It's not in the middle of nowhere, but there's privacy, especially for smoke reasons. You know, people want that privacy without having people in their business, but still close to
Exactly.
conveniences, you know.
I get it. Guys, if you guys looking for some money, and y'all better start y'all a Airbnb, a short-term rental. Y'all ain't got to, this is proof that, guys, this is proof, okay, tonight, okay, that you can step outside of the boundaries, okay, you can do your own thing, and you can still be successful, right, within the same niche in real estate, right? Just
Yeah.
say, you know, you got Jordans, you got Yeezys, you got LeBrons, okay? All three of these, they all still play basketball, but they all still three got shoes, and you can often find the McDonald's right across the street from a motherfucking Burger King, okay? So listen, it's all game, right? People love game, and plus, right? Once you get into to spaces like this, you meet people like Casey, right? You meet people who's transparent and saying, "Hey, look, I ain't Bitcoin ain't do this." Right, I got my hustle on, I got my grind on. I thought about it, I wrote it down, I executed this thing, and then here we are today on the podcast before launch, right? So, guys, you guys can do anything you want to do, right? If you might be watching this right now, you was like, man, I'm trying to get a short term rental, right? This may have sparked something in your mind while you watching or while you listening, to go and do it. Guys, listen, just do it. Do what you got to do, right? The only regret that you would have is not doing it. It's the only regret you're gonna have not doing it. And if you do it and some don't go right, guess what? It didn't go right on purpose, so you can learn, right? It didn't go
Exactly.
right on purpose, so you can learn. So, guys, there's a lesson, lesson in everything. Before we go, we also talk about influential people, right? So, during your journey in cannabis, during your journey since birth, right? Give me 3 influential people, right? That have impacted your life, business. Yeah, it's life or business.
Life and business. I got to meet one of my Canna idols, Ed Rosenthal, a few years ago. That was awesome. He was a writer of a lot of the grow books that we love. And then, gosh, 3 influential people. That kind of is a tough one, though. Big question. I would say, as far as life and living, I have read and really can appreciate a lot about the life of Gandhi. He was very simple but very intelligent in the way he lived. And last but not least, man, Tupac. I'm going to be honest. Like, if you really listen to his lyrics, that man was a prophet. He
Yeah,
saw a lot coming before it happened. So,
that's twice. That's twice. That's twice for Pac on the show. That's no, actually, I think that's 3 times for Pac
man,
on the show.
it's so solid, though. And it really
Most
is.
definitely, yeah. Most definitely, most
Been
definitely.
listening for a long time, but very much motivated in that right. And the same with Bob Marley. I mean, if you really listen to his lyrics and not just the vibe of the song, they have so much soul and so much to share. And I think motivation through music is one of the biggest things this generation's missing out on.
Yeah, most definitely. Now we was talking about, like you just said, motivation through music. We was just talking about the books, as well. What are 3 books? If you had to write a book today, what would you call it and why?
Man, probably just be learning through the journey, because I have said many a times, the things I've thought I've wanted most in life usually didn't end up that way. And so really just learning and humbling myself and knowing that what I think I want and what I want to achieve is just a guideline for what I'm going to experience. And when I try to let go of some of that control and just live more fluidly, kind of focus on how I feel through more of it than what it's doing for me, maybe financially or what that looks like. But definitely learning through the journey, because that is what my life has been over these last few years as a small business owner through COVID.
No doubt, most definitely. So we are open for launch. What is our launch date?
Well, technically, our very first renters will be in tomorrow, so that's really exciting for us.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's really cool. We just got our booking website up October 8th, so to see this turnaround, I think we have 2 rentals through November, so that's cool. But yeah, tomorrow will be our first day, so very excited, a little anxious,
Perfect.
but
It is going down.
yes.
Definitely going down. Hey guys, once again, um, we would like to thank Casey for coming through, showing us some love, giving us some knowledge on some cannabis, some knowledge on short-term rentals, some strength for some of us who's sitting contemplating moving forward with short-term rentals, whether you guys contemplating on buying one, whether you guys are sticking where you guys are in the business thinking about leaving. This may be your pivot, right? This may be your pivot. So whether you're watching or you listening, guys, hope you guys take the information, apply the information. Don't just watch or just listen, because the stuff that we talk about is basic. If you implement what you want, it's pretty much what you get. The universe pretty much will bend its will for you, right?
Yes.
Confirmation is everything. Write it down. Write it down. Write it down. Can't stress this enough, guys, to write it down, right? Because you write it down, it's gonna happen. See, I got a board behind me, big old board, right? Because I'll be writing it down, right? It's empty now because I've accomplished some stuff, but I'm about to fill it back up. So, thanks for coming by. We heard a baby in the back. We got a new baby, guys, in the family.
Oh yeah.
Congratulations. Congratulations on the baby. You're also engaged, so congratulations on that as well.
Thank you.
Congratulations to the hubby to come. Guys, it's been fun talking cannabis. It's been fun talking short-term rentals. Guys, catch us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, as well as Anchor. Casey, it's been fun having you. We don't really do it, but I was just thinking about it the other day. Kind of letting the guests leave everybody with a thought of the day, right? So since you're launching the short-term rental tomorrow for Cannabis Friendly, can you leave us with the thought of the day?
I would say even if you don't think you can accomplish something, you really can make it happen. When you manifest it for yourself, you can achieve anything that you set your mind to. And that sounds so cliche, but it's so true. If I would have looked into the future 5 years, I never could have seen myself here. So I'm excited to see what the next 5 years bring me. And all things are possible through cannabis. I think that's something to say here too for myself. That was
Right.
my reality.
Most definitely. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Casey, thank you guys so much for joining us. We had a great time. Guys, once again, Miss Casey Belew. And don't
Thank
forget the
you.
book, guys.
Thank
Most
you for
importantly,
having
don't
us.
forget the book, greengoddessgetaway.com. Guys, book it whenever you're in the area. If you ain't in the area, you know some people who going down to the casino, let them know, hey, you guys can go here, and you ain't got to be ducking behind the hotel in the wind, eating up your blunt and all that stuff, right? Right? You can relax, enjoy, and in a safe space, right? Because that's most important, right? That it's a
Absolutely.
safe space. Everyone's welcome. Bring good weed, bring good vibes, guys. That's it. Casey, once again, man, thank you for coming.
Thank you. You guys have a
Yeah,
good night.
you too. Bye bye.